September 18th, 2025, the FBI arrested Matthew Derrick Hudson in what would become one of the most brazen investment frauds of the year. The charge? Wire fraud. The amount? $120 million. But here's what makes this case absolutely insane. Hudson convinced 6 U.S. investors that his AI company had $218 million in cash. The real number? $6 million. He told them the company made $114 million in profit. The actual result? A $10 million loss. With falsified audit reports and fake email accounts, this CEO built an empire on Photoshop and lies. This is the story of how Matthew Hudson faked an entire unicorn and how he got away with it for 2 years. Matthew Derrick Hudson wasn't some random fraudster operating from a basement. He was the CEO and founder of Invenia Technical Computing Corporation, a Canadian company that claimed to be revolutionizing energy markets with artificial intelligence. The pitch was compelling. Invenia told investors it used AI and machine learning to predict energy demand and optimize power grid operations. Think about it, helping utility companies save millions by knowing exactly when electricity demand would spike, when to buy power, when to sell it back to the grid. In an era where every startup slaps AI-powered on their pitch deck, Invenia's story sounded legitimate. They had real clients, they had real technology, they had audited financial statements from a reputable Canadian accounting firm, or so investors thought. Between October 2020 and January 2022, during what Hudson called Series B funding rounds, he successfully raised approximately $120 million from 6 different US-based investors. These weren't small-time angel investors gambling lunch money. These were institutional players conducting what they believed was proper due diligence. They reviewed the financials, they analyzed the market opportunity, they verified the audit reports. Everything checked out. Except none of it was real. What these investors didn't know, what they couldn't have known without forensic investigation, was that the documents they were reviewing had been systematically altered. The audited financial statements they trusted? Fabricated. The email confirmations from the accounting firm? Fake addresses created by Hudson himself. The question isn't just how Hudson did this, it's how he convinced sophisticated investors to wire $120 million without anyone catching the fraud until it was too late. Let me show you exactly how Matthew Hudson pulled this off, because the mechanics of this fraud are almost more shocking than the dollar amounts. The document fabrication. Hudson's primary weapon was the 2019 audited financial statement from Invenia's legitimate Canadian accounting firm. This was a real audit, prepared by real accountants, showing real numbers. The problem? Those real numbers looked terrible for fundraising. So Hudson opened the PDF and went to work. The actual 2019 gross revenue, approximately $20 million, respectable for a growing tech company, but not unicorn material. Hudson's fabricated version, $227 million. He didn't just add a few million to make the numbers look better. He multiplied the revenue by more than 10 times. But revenue manipulation alone wouldn't be enough to convince investors. He needed to show profitability. The real 2019 audit showed Invenia had a net income loss of approximately $10 million. Again, completely normal for a scaling tech startup investing in growth. Hudson's fabricated version, a positive net income of $114 million. He had transformed a company losing money into a wildly profitable unicorn. On paper, Invenia was printing cash. The cash position lie. But here's where the fraud becomes almost comical in its audacity. The single most important number for any investor conducting due diligence is cash on hand. It doesn't matter how profitable your income statement looks if you don't have money in the bank to operate. The real 2019 audit showed Invenia held approximately $6 million in Canadian cash, again reasonable for a company of its size. Hudson's fabricated audit? $218 million in cash. He claimed his company was sitting on more than $200 million while simultaneously asking investors for $120 million more. And somehow, nobody questioned why a company with that much cash needed additional funding. The email deception. The altered documents alone wouldn't have worked. Sophisticated investors don't just accept PDFs at face value. They verify. They reach out to the auditing firm. They confirm the numbers directly. Hudson knew this, so he created fake email accounts. Using addresses designed to look nearly identical to the legitimate Canadian accounting firm's domain, often just one letter different, Hudson responded to investor verification requests himself. When investors sent confirmation emails asking, "Are these the real numbers?" Hudson, impersonating the auditors, wrote back, "Yes, confirmed." The smoking gun that eventually brought him down? A forensic analysis revealed these email addresses were registered to Hudson. The IP addresses traced back to his devices. The metadata in the official correspondence showed it was created minutes after investors requested verification. What makes this case particularly damaging isn't just the fraud itself, it's the timeline. Hudson ran this scheme from October 2020 through January 2022. That's more than a year. 6 different investors, presumably with their own teams of analysts and legal counsel, all fell for the same fabricated documents. Not one of them requested the original, unaltered audit directly from the Canadian accounting firm. Not one of them noticed the fake email domains. This wasn't a sophisticated technical hack. This wasn't some complex financial engineering that required a PhD to understand. This was Photoshop and fake Gmail accounts. And it worked for 2 years. So how did it finally unravel? According to the criminal complaint filed by the Department of Justice on September 18, 2025, the fraud was discovered when one of the later stage investors decided to conduct deeper verification. This investor, whose identity hasn't been publicly disclosed, reached out directly to the Canadian accounting firm using contact information found independently, not from any documents Hudson provided. The response was immediate and devastating. We have no record of those financial figures. The audit report you're referencing has been altered. Once the first thread was pulled, the entire fabrication collapsed. Forensic accountants were brought in. The real audited financial statements were obtained directly from the source. Email metadata was analyzed. The fake accounts were traced. Bank records were subpoenaed to track where the $120 million actually went. The core deception was elegant in its simplicity. Hudson had taken a real, legitimate audit and systematically changed every number that mattered. Revenue up by 10 times, losses converted to massive profits, cash reserves inflated by more than 30 times. And because he controlled the communication channel through fake email accounts, investors never had a chance to discover the truth until it was too late. Matthew Derrick Hudson now faces federal wire fraud charges. If convicted, he could face up to 20 years in federal prison and be required to pay full restitution, $120 million he almost certainly no longer has. Here's what everyone is missing about the Invenia fraud. This isn't a story about one bad CEO who got too greedy. This is a story about catastrophic failure in the entire venture capital due diligence process. 6 institutional investors, professional analysts, legal teams, due diligence checklists that are supposed to catch exactly this kind of fraud. and every single one of them was fooled by altered PDFs and fake email addresses. The real question. The question we should be asking is, how did Hudson do this? We know how. He used basic document editing and impersonation. The question is, what does this say about every other startup that's raised money? If a CEO can fabricate $200 million in cash and $114 million in fake profits using tools anyone can download and fool 6 different investment firms for 2 years, what else is being faked right now? How many other AI unicorns are running on fabricated growth metrics? How many other audited financials have been subtly altered, not as obviously as Hudson's, but just enough to make the numbers look better?